Hello everyone. Today we're going to be creating the same console game that I made before, which is an RPG game where you can you encounter an enemy and you get the ability to select a attack or a multi-hit to heal yourself. It's like a RPG, Final Fantasy VII style, original Final Fantasy VII, not the remake. We're going to do that instead of inside of a Windows console where it's all text-based. Inside of a Windows Forms app. So instead of just having the black console with all the white text, we're going to have a Windows Form where you have in a little interactive GUI with buttons, etc. So what I did is I opened up Visual Studio 2019, and in the top here, after hitting Create a New Project, I type in Forms to see Windows Forms app, which is the .NET Framework, or Windows Form app with the .NET Core. I'm going to select .NET Core because that's the newer one of the two. What I'm going to be showing you today will work in either, because it's basic C#. So we're going to call this the RPG game WinForms, and we're going to create that. And I already named it that, so I'm going to put it 2 because I was testing it before. So the project is being created. So for this first tutorial, we're going to be showing how to create the user interface, which is essentially the Windows Forms part, and then in the next session we'll talk about the code to make it work. So at this point, what we want to do is we want to have a window come up that displays the game title and a button to start the game. Once you hit start game, all the label output is going to appear on the screen. The 4 buttons to attack are going to appear on the screen, and then you can do what you want to do with the attack and such to take action inside the game. So in order to do that, we first the project is first started. So over here you'll see inside here solutions. This is the project that we just made, and it contains one form and then the program. The program file, which if you open it up you will see, is pretty basic. You don't really have to change this at all. This is all the typical boilerplate code that it makes for you. And this part here, it says application run, so it starts the form 1 application or file, which is over here, form 1 file. So in that form 1 file, you'll see if you open this down here, you got the form1.cs, which opens up this designer view. And so in this form, if we click on this form right here, like inside the form designer, we click on the form. I'm going to say form a lot during this. We go over here to the lower right, you'll see properties. Now properties allows you to change certain things on the form. So for example, the text property on this form is form 1, which we can see in the upper left here. It says form 1 here. So we're going to change that to say RPG game WinForms. So now you'll see up here in the upper left, when we run this program, it's going to say RPG game WinForms. So I'm going to hit F5 on my keyboard, which is the equivalent of hitting the play button up here, and we're going to launch the application. So this is just from a file new project. It doesn't necessarily do anything right now, so it's just going to appear on the screen, and you can see how it looks. So here's the application. It's got my title here. You can expand it, shrink it, and close it. So we're going to close it. So for now, I'm going to leave it the size it is, and I'm going to add in a label. So in the upper left over here, you'll see toolbox. If you click on that, it'll expand the toolbox of items that you can add into a Windows form. Now, if I click off of it, it collapses. So I'm going to hit this little pin icon here to pin the toolbox here so I can just easily drag and drop here. So I'm going to go to see, like here you can have all Windows forms, but I'm opening up common Windows forms right now. And I'm going to grab a label and drag it on to the Windows form. So I can see this is a label, and this is where you would put text. So I'm going to place it here and go to the text property of the label. I'm going to change this to say RPG game we'll say Windows Forms. And then we're going to go here to the font property. And I'm going to click on the little dots over here to change the font size because I want this to be a little bit bigger. So I'm going to change it to 24, make it a little bigger. And we got that right there. We have the Windows form title. I want to have a part where I can display the output of the game. So if you remember from the Windows console game, you entered your name, and then you encountered a giant enemy crab. and that's when you fall. And all that stuff was displayed on the screen. We're still going to have that displayed here, so we need to have a means to display that. So here we have a text box. Yep, and I can put my text box here. Now this text box here can go left and right. It can't go up and down. However, in this text box, I want to make it like a text area. If we're thinking of programming, I want to make it be able to go down. So here we can set the multi-line property here instead of false to true. In this case now it could be expanded like so. Now if I run this, and you'll be able to see it, it's basically a big text box that I can type in, and it can go to multiple lines. So that's pretty good. We're going to make it so you can't type into it, but you can read it so it keeps going down. And you'll notice now when I go down past these lines, I can't scroll up. I can drag here and slide up, and then I can get there, but I can't scroll. There's no scroll bar. I can't really go down and scroll up to see what has happened in the past. So we're going to handle that next. If you go over here to scroll bars, I'm going to set that I only want to allow scrolling in the vertical sense. I don't want to be able to scroll horizontally. So at this point, I have placed the text box to the left and right. It's got the scroll bars. Now I'm going to put a start game button right below it, and this is the button I'm going to want you to hit when you start the game. So start game, and this is going to ask you for your name, and then I'm going to put 4 buttons for being able to do the attacks: attack, multi-attack, heal, and guard, which is what we did in the last tutorial for the console game, RPG game. However, at this point, before I get to that, I need to show what kind of like an idea of what we're doing here. So RPG game Windows form. What I want to happen is be able to see this title and this start game button, and that's it. So if I click on this text box here, I'm going to make it so its visible property here is true. I'm going to make that false. So this is not visible when the app starts. And I'm also going to make it you're unable to type inside of it. And to do that, we're going to do that by setting the read-only property to true. So we set the RPG game form text box to read-only, so this allows us to only read what's inside of there but not type anything. So if we run this right now, we'll see that when we start here, the text box is not visible as we set this to not visible. And if it was visible, I would not be able to type inside of it. So now I only have the title and start game. Now, if I go here to start game, I want to make start game do something when I click on it. So first, if I scroll over here to the properties, you'll see here the name property is button 1. Now, whatever this name is allows us to refer to that in the code behind. So if I'm inside this code and I was to make a just random function, so I'm going to make a private void test just so I can get autocomplete, you'll see button 1 here. And this allows me to refer to that button in the code behind. So now I'm going to change that to something that I can better know. So typically in Windows Forms, in order to easily find or type what you're looking for, you want to follow a certain naming standard. So, for example, in this case, if I have all my buttons, I'm going to put BTN, like button, short, and then I'm going to say start game. So in this case, whenever I come back here in the designer, I can always say like button, start game, or whatever. And then if I want to handle the label, LB for label, and I can do something like that. To refer to it. Now, if I double click it inside of here, it's going to automatically create, excuse me, I'm going to delete this real quick. It's going to automatically create a function here, button start game click, which is going to get called when the start button is clicked. So in this case, we're going to load up the new form that it's going to be a modal form on top of our current page, which allows us to type in our name. And we're not going to let you continue the game until you enter the name. So before we do that, before we type anything code-wise here, we're going to have to create a new form. So I'm going to right-click here, say Add, and then New Windows Form. And then I'm going to say this is name form. So name form is now displaying here. I want this form to be a lot smaller. I want this to contain a label, which just says enter name. I want a text box, which is where you're going to enter your name. And I'm going to align that here, like so. And I'm going to have a button that says submit name. I'm going to put it here and then shrink this a little bit just to make it, Yep, I'm going to say submit name. And there we go. Okay. So right now this form is called name form. So if I go back over here to the button start click, when we have this, I'm going to create an instance of the name form. So I'm going to say create the form we are going to load. And this is name form equals new, I'm going to call it just name form, equals new name form. So now I'm going to display this form as a modal. And we're going to do that by saying nameform.show dialog. It's called dialog here because we see, as you can see, is dialog. It shows the form as a modal dialog box. So if we do this, and just to kind of show, we'll come over here to RPG game forms, we'll load it up, hit start game, and you'll see this form comes up here, and I can type in my name and hit submit name. Right now we don't have it doing anything, so it's not going to do anything. So I'm going to close that and leave it here. And then just to kind of show something real quick, if we hit start game, since this is a modal form that requires this to be back here, I can't click back here because you have to handle this before you can interact with this again. So I have to close this before I can close the application here. So here we're going to make the minimize, maximize, and control box disappear. So if you see here, control box will determine whether or not this has a control box at the top. We can remove that, which makes all those options disappear. But you also want to make it so you can't minimize or maximize the box. So here, minimize box set to false, maximize box set to false. I missed on this one. So now you'll see when I start the game or the application, I come here and I have to enter the name and submit. I can't shrink, minimize, or anything like that. Which right now it doesn't do anything, so it breaks. So for this name, submit name, I'm going to give this button call. I'm going to say button submit name, and this button submit name allows me to access this button. And then for this text box, I'm going to say text name, and this is how I'm going to refer to the text box that has your name. So when I double click this submit name, I get button submit name click, I'm going to check if the player supplied a name. So we're going to say if string.is null or empty, or in this null or right space, I'm going to say text name dot text, which is what gets filled in when you type it in. And so if it is given, then we're going to the name was given, pass it back to the caller form. Else, the name was not entered. And then now we're going to alert the user. So now I do not have any label here to display any errors. So here I'm going to put a label in between right below here, and we're going to remove the text on this label, But actually, before I do that, I'm going to go over here to font color. I believe it's 4-color here. And I'm going to make it custom. I'm going to make it red. So it's going to have red error text. And we're going to call this label error text. Or I'll just say label error. And then this, is it visible? We're going to set it to false, because I don't want to see it on the screen. So if I go back here, we're going to say label error. We're going to make it visible again so we can see it. We're going to set the error text to be no name was provided. Please enter. Want to continue. And that will make it show this visible text here, and it will set this text here. We also want to make it so that if you come into this application, that we hide the text. Make the text hidden for the error. Label error visible equals false. So basically, we're going to come in every single time you click it, we're going to hide the error, because now we're going to check now to make sure, is it okay? And then if not, we'll put it. Otherwise, we're going to hit it, and while it's processing the name, it's going to come up and be like, yo, you got an error. That's if you entered it first and you were wrong, and then you put it in afterwards. So now we're going to pass it back to the caller form. So in order to do this, we have not set this up exactly yet. So we're going to do that now. This public name form, this is the constructor where it initializes the component. We're going to add something in here where we're going to pass in the form1. I'm going to call this caller form. So now this form cannot be made without passing in a form1 caller form. We're going to create a private variable that's a private variable to this class of a form1, and we're going to call this the caller. So I'm going to save the reference to the caller, and that's basically our caller equals the caller form that we're passing in. So this private variable here is inside of class, and for every instance of this class right here, we're going to have whoever was called saved. So since it's here, I can access it in this function, I can access it in this function, any function in this class, it's saved. So when this constructor gets called, I'm saving the one that was passed in into the one that I'm saving for this guy. Because after I leave these squiggly brackets, this caller form is not available to me anymore. So I'm saving it so it is. So you'll see now that I get an error message, which involves the fact that I created this constructor now, and it needs the caller form. Now I'm inside form1, and I'm inside this class. Like, this is the class that I want to return. And in this case, I'm saying this a lot, and that's spoiler alert. If you use the word this, the keyword this, which comes up blue, you're referring to the class that I'm currently in is what I want to pass in. So I'm passing in this instance of form1 into this. So I've just now passed into this constructor this caller form, which is the main game, and saving it here. So at this point now, I can now do stuff with that caller form. So in that caller form, I'm going to create a private variable here, and it's going to be a string. It's going to be a player name. So when this starts, it's empty. So now, over here in the player name, so here we're going to call the caller, and we're going to say player name. Oops, hold on. This has to be public. So this is kind of an example of the whole public-private thing that I discussed in the previous tutorials. If this is public, other classes can access it. If this is private, you can only access it in between these squiggly bars. But since it's public now, I can access it out here. So caller.playerName equals text name.text.trim. And what trim does is if I typed in David space, like 5 spaces afterwards, let's just say 4 spaces afterwards, David with 4 spaces would be my name. But I want to get rid of the spaces at the end, so by saying trim, it cuts out all white spaces, so it literally just has David. If this text here was null, then this would crash and it would say, give you a null reference. But since I already checked right here, if text name is not null, with not null, then I can use trim because I know that this is not null. So now I've just assigned the player's name, and now I'm going to close this form. So this dot close, which will close this form. Okay. So at this point, this form right here has a player name, but it is not set. So if I hit start game and I hit submit name, it says no name is provided. Please enter one to continue. I probably need to just shrink out that please enter to continue. So now I'm going to enter David, submit name, and as you see, it goes away and it was set inside the code. So as mentioned, I'm going to just shrink this to make it look a little better. Okay. So at this point, we have successfully asked for the player's name by creating a new modal window. And now we're going to display this form. Now, I want to have buttons, a container. So here, over here for containers, I could have a table layout panel. I'm going to put that right here, and this allows me to lay out a table. And what that means is it's a table in the fact that it's laying out things in rows and columns. So this is just a container. This isn't going to show up on the screen. If I run this right now, which I'll run it right now, you'll see it's empty. I mean, it's cutting off the start game because it's going up it a little bit. So I'm gonna shrink this down a little, or expand this, I guess. And we're gonna move this down, and we're gonna put this right there. Yep, and then I'm going to bring this back up about there. I think that's good. Now in here, I'm going to put 4 buttons inside of this container. Boop, boop, boop. And now this button is going to be button attack. Button attack. The text on it is going to be attack. We're going to click on the container here that I have. I'm going to shrink this down here, and we're going to make this not visible when we start. And then therefore, when you open it, you'll see all the buttons will be gone. So it's not visible when the game starts. So we have to get this a name, this container. I'm going to call this table layout. So table layout actions container. And this way now, so when I go back to, I set the player's name, and before I close it, I'm going to start showing these things. So I'm going to say display the game controls and hide the start game button. So at this point, I'm going to try to access the button start game. So if I say button start game, you'll see it's not coming up. Why is it not coming up? Because this is made by the Windows Form system. These buttons are private to this, so I can't access it. So to get around this, I'm going to create a public function that does nothing. I'm going to say start game. And when this gets called, I'm going to start the game. And in here, I'm going to pass in the string for the player name. And I'm going to change this back to private. So we're doing this a little differently now from the way I had it before, because this way it allows us to compartmentalize things better in the form. So here, the private player name cannot be set externally, but we can call start game. So start game, you pass in the player's name. So here, I'm going to just say start the game in the caller form. So I'm going to say caller, start game. I'm going to pass in the name text trim. So now this is all set, and I never really have to touch this again. we're going to touch it one more time, but I'm just saying for code wise. So here in start game, I'm going to assign the player name. So here the player name equals player name. And then we're going to display the game controls and hide the start button. So now we can say button start game visible equals false. The table layout action container visible equals true, which makes all the button appears. And now we want the text. I don't think I actually gave this one a name before. So this guy is going to be our text box game log. So text box game log visible equals true. So what this does now is going to hide the hide the start button, display these buttons, and display this visible form. And I also should finish setting up these buttons here just so you remember what they were before. The multi from the previous game, multi attack. So I'm going to say button multi attack, button heal, and this is button guard. Button guard. So now when we start, you should see when you enter the game, going to submit, no name is provided. I'm going to say David, submit name, start game disappears. I have the form that I can click on here, but I can't type, and I got attack, guard, multi, and heal. So yeah, everything's coming up pretty decently. One thing that I don't particularly like is over here when I hit start game and I get to this here, I'm going to type in David and I'm going to hit enter, and nothing's happening. This is just a little pet peeve of mine. Just for speed, I kind of like the ability to make it do things. Programming, most of the stuff you're going to do is not already given to you, which is kind of interesting to me because it never really occurred to me that people really have to program every single component of a program. Like for here, I hit the enter key. It doesn't know that it wants me, when I hit the enter key, when I'm focused on this box, that I want to submit that name form. Like you have to say everything. Like if I wanted to make Control C be a command to do something in this application, I would have to program that. Like nothing's really necessarily given to you. It's just, it doesn't assume that, oh, you want to hit enter, so that makes it submit this form. It doesn't know that. So in order to do that, I'm going to stop this. We're going to go back to our name form, and inside the constructor, I'm going to create a event on keydown for the text box. So create a keydown event for when a key is pressed in the text box. So here we got the text box name. I call it text, yeah, text name. So just saying, I just realized that I've been calling it, this one here, I have it text box as txt, and the other one I have it as tb. So technically I'm not even following my own naming conventions, but don't do that. Make sure you follow the right naming conventions. So actually, just to fix that, we're going to go over back to here. We're going to change this, instead of being tb game log, we're going to change it to text game log, and it should automatically go through the code and change every part that has that already and fix it. So here we're going to go to our key down event, which you can see is an event because of the lightning bolt, and we're going to subscribe to that. So in order to add yourself to an event, you have to hit plus and then equals, so you're assigning the function on the right to the key down event. And then now I'm going to make an anonymous function inside the code right here, and that's going to take in the sender and args, which is typical for an event. going to do this. So I'm gonna have to go back over this because this is new syntax that I haven't shown you guys yet. So everything inside of these squigglies is going to be the code that runs when the key down is pressed. So every single time I type this, like David, D, this code's gonna run. A, this code's gonna run. V, this code's gonna run. I'm gonna hit spacebar, this code's gonna run, etc. So I'm going to check if the key that is pressed is the enter key. So here in the arguments that are giving us, we check the key code and we're checking if the keys are enter, the enter key, and if so, we're going to click the submit name button. So button submit name dot, I think it's perform click. Yes, perform click. Okay, so going back to the beginning. If we go back here to events on, or click on the text box here, you can see over here on the right, these are properties that here, and then we have events. If I click on events, it shows me what events I have access to. So I can click here and then make a whole new event and name it here and hit enter, and it would make it for me. But I did it inline. But you can see that when a control is added, you can have something code run. When a dock is changed or when you double click it, something happens. When you drag something on it. So in this case, we've added a function for the key down event, which is here. So occurs when a key is first pressed. Then you can have it when it's presses and releases key, it keys up. What it means by key down, it's like, so you have the key, if you push it down, it's like that counts. And then up means you released and then the key came up. And then pressed would be while it's down. So a key down, if I held D, it would only happen once. But if I said key press and I held D, it's like D, 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 it would continue. So that's like if you're making a game and you're doing like WASD to move, you would do a key press for W to track if you want to keep moving your character forward. Because if you just did key down, move him forward, then he would just move forward once, and then he wouldn't move. So you need like key press, and then he's like move forward, 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 because it keeps reading the W. So if we go back here, that's how I figured out key down is an event that's allowed. You could also just hit dot here and go through the cycle by events here and see what events are available if you like the code approach. And then here we have as I explained before, this is how you subscribe to an event. So if you want to make an anonymous function, you can make parentheses here to show what gets passed into the function. Then you show this is called a lambda expression. As you can see if I put my mouse over it, which is equals in this, and this says everything past this is the function that takes these parameters. Then you put the squiggly to say that everything inside of here is that function, and then away you go. So this is technically the equivalent of what you see here. Private void, and then if I made a function name, the object is the sender, and then it has the arguments that are passed in here, which is the key event args. I'm just doing this shorthand, so it's all created kind of for me in line, because I didn't want to make this whole new function. I had to type it all out, and it's for something that's so simple. It's literally just this if statement. So to kind of show that now, if I come here and hit, that code was run, it's not enter, so it didn't do anything, blah, blah, blah. But if I now hit the enter key, it hit the submit button and loaded it up. So now the last thing I'm going to show for today is that the screen or the view here can be stretched and opened and expanded. And this form is not expanding with the screen. So I specifically made this table out here because the table layout can autosize. We're going to set it to autosize, and here for each button, I'm going to have it where it's dock here. I'm going to have it dock in the center of its container. So by doing that, it's going to fill by hitting this middle part. We're saying fill. It's going to fill every part of the container it's in. So by here, dock, and we're going to say fill by hitting the center, heal, dock center and guard dock center. Now this table container layout here, we want to have it so I have this table container has anchor here. We want to anchor it to the right and bottom. So we want to have this anchored to the top of the form, the left of the form, the right of the form, and the bottom of the form. So when either of those expand, this is going to expand with it. And then for the table view, the last thing we have to set is this autosize mode. We're going to have, instead of grow only, we're going to have it grow and shrink, because we can, expand or shrink the view here. So if I start this now, you will see that this will, after I start the game, if I expand this, it kind of proportionally grows. Since I had it from the top here, it's going to proportionally take that same amount of space and attach to the left and the right and the bottom. And so you can see it kind of like grows the buttons there and then shrinks. Eventually, if you go too small, it can't fit in the screen, so you're kind of out of it at that point. But last thing we're going to do is we're going to do that for the same thing for this and the win forms here. So for the text box, we're going to click here. We're going to set the anchors to be the all four of them. They were already set. I'm just clicking them to kind of show. So all four here, and then when I start this, you will now see that when I start the game, this will now expand with the game. So to conclude, the first lesson on Windows Forms, where we just display the actual forms part, and then the next part we'll implement the code of the game console game, which will be very similar to what we wrote for the console game before. We have the Windows form, which says RPG game Windows form. It's blank. We hit start game. We can enter our name. So here I'm going to say David. Hit enter, and we now have the game log here, and then the attack, multi-attack, guard, and heal button. So next time we'll work on making attack, multi-attack, guard, heal. We're going to hit this as opposed to typing in 1, 2, 3, or 4 inside of a console. We're going to click these buttons here, do the same thing. You're going to see we'll attack the giant enemy crab and big boss, and then we'll end up finding out who is victorious. And you'll see that most of the code, since the way we wrote it last time, was kind of compartmentalized into class. We should be able to just take most of this game loop and just stick it right back on here. And then instead of just writing those console write lines out to the screen, we're just going to write it out to this text box, and it's essentially going to be perfect one-to-one code, because you can kind of, if you write your code good in a way that it makes sense just as a code base, like as functions, and it does certain tasks, you can easily just move it to different platforms and just like, oh, I want to attach that result to this label, or I want to attach that result to this part, and then you're good. So thank you all for watching, and I will see you in the next video.